Los Angeles Chargers at the Atlanta Falcons. Chargers favored by 1.5 here in Atlanta. Sunday at 1 o'clock. Chargers coming off the Monday night loss. They're 7-4. Falcons coming off a bye, and they're 6-5 here.
Yeah,
leading the NFC South at the moment.
Difficult to think of two offenses more different to match up with than Baltimore's and then Atlanta's. Right. On the one hand, you've got the most dynamic ball carrier in the NFL, Lamar Jackson, who's got that freakish ability to just take over and do whatever he wants. On the other hand, you've got Kirk Cousins, who can barely move in the pocket. Even when they do move him out of there, rollouts, it's like old man Cousins with a busted Achilles. Very different scenario.
Yeah, it is. I saw Raheem Morris talking this week. I think there were questions about why don't you use more play action? And it's like, yeah, we're going to get back to a little bit more play action. Falcons have the lowest play action rate in the NFL. We know. I mean, Zach missed that day at PFF apparently.
Play action day.
But where we just said, hey, when you go to the NFL, all you do is run play. You just fake the handoff, and all things get solved in the pass game. Now, it is an interesting dynamic. I mean, the Rams are kind of low this year as well. The Shanahan schemes have been lower than usual, right? That had been one of the all the Shanahan tree derivative, advantages was running play action, having that little extra deception. I will say the Falcons' offense they're doing other things. The way they play with tempo, the way they've been playing with tempo on 3rd and 4th down. If you look at some of those charts on 4th down aggressiveness, Atlanta's 1, 2, or 3, in a lot of those charts with Raheem Morris. I think Raheem Morris's 4th down decisions have directly led to multiple wins. So it's a really fascinating matchup where Atlanta, I thought, was going to be out in front in this NFC South race, but Bucs have this easy schedule, and they're creeping back up on them.
It feels a little bit like Raheem Morris has decided if this is going to fail this time around as a head coach, it's not going to be because I wasn't aggressive enough and ballsy and gambling enough. I'm going to go out swinging if I'm going to go out at all.
Including drafting Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah,
8,
like he's
right?
just going to look
being a part of all that.
It didn't work out last time. This time I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And that means going for it when I want to go for it. I'm not going to be a slave to convention or to, the usual way of doing things. I'm going to go out the way I want to do this. So I'm going to be aggressive. We're going to do it. And it's like I think he's doing a good job. Zach Robinson, we might genuinely be reaching this inflection point where the Shanahan offense is just less effective than it's been in previous years, which automatically means Zach Robinson's job is a lot harder than potentially it looked on paper, because you're dealing with figuring out what the offense needs to be with a diminished version of Kirk Cousins slowly improving his way back from an injury, at the same time as inherently your sort of offensive framework is slightly less effective than it's been in previous years. And that's why I think you're seeing this weekly difference in the offense. It's developing, it's evolving. It's not the same thing it was week one. It's changing. And that, whether it's a good or a bad job, it's a thing other people don't have to deal with.
One other thing that we saw right before the bye was a little bit heavier workload for Bijan Robinson running the ball. And I do wonder, not directly, in the Denver game, the workflow wasn't really, the game flow wasn't really there for it in the Denver game, but in New Orleans, 20 carries, I do wonder how much the rest of the league, seeing Derrick Henry, seeing Saquon Barkley, I wonder how much you just keep grinding it out with Bijan Robinson if you're Zach in the Falcons. Like, just give him more of the touches. They've done a pretty good job getting the ball to him, I think. Run game, pass game. But he has, I think, the ability to have a similar impact as those guys that are in this, MVP race if he gets those, 20 to 25 carries.
Bijan Robinson currently has a higher PFF grade than MVP frontrunner Saquon Barkley. He has a slightly worse PFF grade than Derrick Henry, the best graded running back in the NFL. So I think you're right. Like, he is that caliber of player.
If there's a limitation of the running back grades, it's not properly separating the 60-yard run from the 30-yard run, and that's where Saquon's been special. So the grade's not the best way to maybe separate those two.
I think it's entirely fair, though, to say that Bijan Robinson is at that level of player.
Oh, yeah, I agree. He's a special player. And so teams make adjustments coming out of the bye. I'm interested in how much more they give Bijan the workload versus spreading it out a little bit, even though I've loved the 1-2 punch of Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, and how much they start to use a little bit more play action and deception. Chargers are without JK Dobbins. That's the other interesting dynamic here. Falcons with this awful pass rush. Chargers want to run the ball, but Herbert's hot. But we've also seen in these, let's just chuck it around type of situations, you're running out of dependable playmakers not named Lad McConkey
Right.
For the Chargers. I would love to play that game, though. Like, if I'm playing the Falcons every week, I might just forget running and just chuck it around the yard, right? We're dropping back 40 times and we're going, but I don't know if the Chargers have the horses to do that.
Yeah. J.K. Dobbins, lucky for him in terms of that looked like it could have been nasty, like a potential season-ending injury of some description. It sounds like it's only a sprain.
We got a knee sprain,
yeah.
The report.
And he'll miss some time, including this game, but at least I'm just happy that the man did not have his knee shredded again after multiple season-ending knee injuries previously. He's a really good. Him and Cam Akers, I think, are amazing comeback stories from a position where you basically need to be at absolute peak ability, athleticism, the peak of your powers to be an NFL running back. To have, in Cam Akers' case, consecutive Achilles injuries, and in J.K. Dobbins' case, multiple massive knee injuries, for them to come back and still be any way effective running backs, I think is a great story. So happy for him that it wasn't a devastating knee injury, but yes, definitely a loss for them in this game because he's clearly their best running back.
Yeah, he is. I would throw the ball with Herbert, man.
You see all the comments from Herbert defending Quentin Johnson?
No.
He did that whole
as a good quarterback should.
Correct. But
I could throw the ball better.
Yeah, he literally said that.
Is that?
He literally started talking about how he could have better ball location. The one that hit him right in the hands.
The one that hit him in stride.
I could have put that 6 inches out further in front. Made it an easier catch for Q. He was who was it?
That's good.
Remember, it was Mahomes. Remember Mahomes? Was it last year or the year before where he had just a litany of terrible receivers that were all when Sky Moore was in the midst of just disastrous receiver play, and Patrick Mahomes is out there after the game being like, yeah, I gotta have better ball location on that awful stone-handed drop that my receiver had. And you're like, dude, these guys are the quarterbacks are full Stockholm syndrome on these receivers. As you say, realistically, they're what are they going to do? Throw them under the bus and be like, I need that guy next week. I need to try and boost his confidence back.
He made those catches. Maybe we win this game.
Right. But he's out there being like, yeah, look, Quentin Johnson's a dynamic playmaker for us. A tough couple of losses, or a tough couple of drops, but it's on me as well. I can give him a better ball. He'll be a big player for us down the stretch, yada, yada. It wouldn't shock me if this game was a let's try and get Quentin Johnson the ball a bit more game. Let's try and get him back on the horse.
It's not even a squeaky wheel. It's just a flat tire game. Pump them back up. It's the squeaky wheel game. That's Malik Neighbors. We'll talk about that later. And part of my prize picks projection. You think this is we'll call it a flat tire game?
I think we might.
He's flat.
See them,
we're going to pump him back up.
Yes, I think we might see them try and feed Quentin Johnson the ball a bit in this game.
All right. Chargers by 1.5 here. Oh, one other interesting dynamic here. Chargers on short rest coming off Monday Night Football, and the Falcons coming off a bye. You don't get that combination.
Big rest discrepancy.
The big rest discrepancy.
There's a lot of those this year.
That and a cross-country trip, Sam.
Brutal.
You got West Coast to East Coast. A lot going on here.
There's a lot of those this year.
That's awful. Actually, a 10 a.m. start for the Chargers after doing
week.
On short week. That's really bad. I'm taking the Falcons.
This is the thing. When you get to the schedule release time, and it was and you just strength of schedule is thrown at you based off just the win-loss record from last year, right?
Not helpful.
Genuinely idiotic way of looking at things, right? There are an awful lot of interesting ways of looking at the schedule where there are wild discrepancies. Because the NFL, I think, when they're plugging in the schedule into the supercomputer and they're spitting all this stuff out, I think are leaning pretty heavily on the traditional way of measuring, strength of schedule. And they're like, you see, everyone's got a reasonably equal schedule. But they're not factoring in things like distance traveled, like you're talking about, or the massive discrepancy that exists in terms of rest days. And, okay, the bye weeks are generally, the same. But I forget there was like a 21-day discrepancy or something in terms of rest between Baltimore and San Francisco this year, who are at either ends of the spectrum. Like the 49ers are at a brutal rest discrepancy relative to other teams, whereas the Ravens tend to be on the good end of this thing. And I forget, it was over 20. It might have been actually the other end of 20, close to a month of like additional rest relative to other teams. So it is a huge thing. I mean, if you're particularly the later in the season it gets, I think the more it probably has an impact. Everyone's hurt. Everyone's battling through something. Those extra days of rest, those extra hours of rest are significant.
Honestly, that was when Kansas City hit their lull late in the season last year, which was like losing a game or two.
Yeah.
That was part of it. They were in those 4 teams, the 4 teams that they're kind of screwing around here with the Christmas game.
Yeah.
Ravens, Chiefs, Steelers, and Texans. Those 4 teams that they're going to play on really tight rest for a couple weeks late in the season.
3 games in 10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lions are in the middle of 3 games in 12 days as well.
As a former professional athlete, you know the difference those hours can make.
I mean, I know we don't have time, but we flew from Tacoma to Nashville. I've told this before. You play that night. And then the next day they did the morning game. You didn't get to sleep in again. It was ridiculous. It was awful. Can't do that. All right, pick a game. Pick a team.
Well, you're making me rethink the whole thing now.
I'm taking the Falcons because the rest.
Yeah. I mean, I
already had the Falcons.
I'm taking the Chargers, but I now hate everything about that because they're on short rest going across the country.
Oh, Harry's taking the Falcons. He knew.
Yeah.
He's been studying the rest charts. So Harry's taking the Falcons.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.